A week later, in the close combat department forest, Setsuna is busy practicing and asks Lionel about his progress. Lionel replies that he had never expected him to memorize everything in less than a week, knowing that it took him at least 2 years to master it. Lionel then walks closer to him on the destroyed ground he made while telling him that he had taught him the Fist of Comet, but corrected himself by saying it was actually a charge of bullet. Setsuna clenched his fist tightly and smiled at Lionel. Later, in the arena with everyone cheering, the host announced that the 781st Elmridge Magic Academy Exchange final match was finally here. The host then introduces Carol from the summoning department against the rising underdog, Setsuna from the close combat department. One of the students asks his friend who he thinks will win, and his friend replies that it is definitely the undefeated summoning department. However, a lady interjects that the close combat department is strong and she has become a fan of Setsuna now. The children then shout to him, cheering him on to do his best. The host then announced that the stage for the final match was the ruins of the goddess, and explained that to prevent any damage from the fierce battle, a strong barrier would be set by the formation mages. Layla excitedly said that finally, it was a stage that wouldn't put Setsuna at a disadvantage, and Lionel replied that he hoped that was the case. On the other hand, Setsuna looks up and stares at the headmaster, thinking that if he becomes the winner, the headmaster has to keep his promise to teach him that second magic. The headmaster notices him and stares back. Suddenly, Carol tells him that he seems in high spirits and that they should do their best. The host then shouts that the anticipated final match begins. Carol immediately orders Fenrir to come out, and Fenrir stared at him, which surprised him. Fenrir then attacks him with a freezing attack, but fortunately, he jumps away in time to avoid it. While covering his face, he notices that Fenrir's attack is a freezing attack that has the same properties as a blizzard. Carol tells him that, as she expected, he has amazing footwork, but she won't give him a chance to rest. She then orders Fenrir to launch multiple attacks on him. He boosts his physical strength tenfold, making it easy for him to dodge Fenrir's attacks. As he gets closer to Carol, he creates a sword and swings it at Fenrir. Layla excitedly shouts that he did it, but Lionel disagrees and explains that summoned beasts are essentially condensed mana, so a wound like that will heal instantly. Carol heals Fenrir and praises it for being strong, while he jumps backward to create distance. Carol then tells him that he has done pretty well so far and orders Fenrir to use another skill. Fenrir howls, releasing a strong blizzard around them and making the floor icy. Surprised, he notices that the entire stage has frozen while Fenrir and Carol approach him. He then realizes that the freezing mana is trapped because of the barrier. The man with Carol from a week before knows that on a frozen stage, Fenrir's attacks will be stronger, and he asks Setsuna what he will do now. On the other hand, he knows that an endurance battle is disadvantageous to him. He dodges Fenrir's stronger attacks and decides that he will match it with his charge bullet. He ducks and jumps to avoid Fenrir's attacks in silence while the students notice that he is on the defensive and, as they expected, defeating the summoning department seemed impossible. The children watch worriedly, but Lionel is surprised to witness something. Layla, noticing him, asks what is wrong, to which Lionel replies that it's nothing. Lionel knows that in order to use the charged bullet, Setsuna needs time to cast it and it cannot be used in a one-on-one scenario, but with Setsuna's outstanding mana control, he'll be able to charge it on his fist while in battle. However, Lionel is worried, knowing that it is not an easy thing to do. Carol notices him, making her wonder if he is scheming something, and is determined not to let him. She then orders another summon named Garuda to come out. Drago is surprised that Carol has summoned a second beast, and Lionel comments that Carol is really talented because she can perform simultaneous summoning. Fenrir and Garuda both rush at him on Carol's command, and when the two summoned creatures jump at him, the floor they are standing on breaks into pieces. Layla worriedly calls his name, but then they see him elbow Garuda away and punch Fenrir with his other hand, throwing both summoned creatures away from him. He then tells Carol that she is indeed an outstanding mage, which is why he expected that she would have a trump card. She is surprised and can't believe that he deflected her attack. He then gathers his power in his fist while telling Carol that it is his turn now, but then the mysterious man raises his fingers and says that it ends there, snapping his fingers. Suddenly, the mark he put on Carol's nape releases a strong power that makes Carol scream in pain. He worriedly calls out to Carol and remembers the magic power around Carol, making him wonder if it was Vindrake, the evil god. Carol, overwhelmed by her summons, begins to lose control due to the black magic. He senses that the ominous mana is similar to that of the evil god, making him wonder what exactly is happening. Carol, clenching her teeth in pain, raises her hand involuntarily to summon more creatures. She then calls forth a master with many heads and arms, 3-headed dogs, a huge rabbit, and a horned horse. The audience, amazed, asks in shock how many summons Carol can command. Lionel slaps his forehead, realizing that the mana clearly isn't emanating from Carol. He shouts to stop the match and cancel the barrier, then asks in panic what the formation mage is even doing. Meanwhile, the mysterious man knows that the barrier can only be cancelled by the one who cast it, and they must be searching for him right now. He asks the formation mage, whom he has also marked, if he is right. The monstrous summons leap toward him, all trying to attack. He scans the area, knowing that the source of the mana must be nearby, and he needs to follow its flow. However, the mysterious man simply points his finger downward, asking him if he really has time to look around in such a situation. Garuda, also under control, flies close and slams him into a pillar with its sharp claws. He screams in pain as the claws slash his body, and he is dragged away by the force of the attack. Layla, in fear and worry, shouts his name, but he manages to stand up despite his severe injuries. The mysterious man smiles upon seeing him hurt and says that locating the source of that mana while fighting against several summoned beasts would be impossible, even for someone as capable as him. With those injuries of his, it would only be a matter of time before he is defeated. Lionel realizes the gravity of the situation. Setsuna won't have any time to even cast his charged bullet. Moreover, Carol is already at her limit, so if the situation isn't resolved soon, she will lose control over her mana and might lose her life. While he was busy fighting the monsters, Carol, in pain, urged him to run away, confirming that she was being controlled by someone else. Tears dropping on Fenrir's fur, she cried out to him to flee before they could kill him. All the summons then rushed at him, but fortunately, he managed to leap in another direction and launched himself at the rabbit monster blocking his path. He slammed it to the ground, but then the horned horse charged at him at full speed. He positioned himself, grabbed the horse's horns, and used all his might to halt its charge. He then lifted it up and, as the other summons closed in, he threw the horse at them, forcing them to back off. The headmaster watched him worriedly from above, and Lionel dashed out of the arena, aware that his mana must already be depleted by more than half, which was a dire situation. Lionel ran swiftly, knowing he had to find the mage who cast the barrier as soon as possible, and called out to Setsuna not to die on him while he catches his breath on the stage, exhausted and severely injured. Suddenly, the rabbit stood up behind him, startling him, and then pierced its grown horn into his leg. He tried to endure the pain, but Layla and the other students watched in horror, shouting that Carol had gone overboard. When the rabbit withdrew its horn, he lost his balance, and the mysterious man knew that with this injury, he couldn't use his magic anymore. He then ordered his pets to finish the job and lowered his finger to control the summons. They all charged toward him. Fenrir, closest to him, opened its mouth wide and bit into one of his hands. The bite intensified, its sharp teeth piercing deeper into his arm. He screamed in pain as his blood splattered on his face. In that moment of agony, he remembered what Lionel had taught them about the most important tactics in battle for a close combat mage. Drago had replied that they should subdue the enemy with a single powerful blow, and he had added that they should keep the damage received as low as possible while closing the gap between themselves and the enemy. Lionel acknowledged that their answers were correct, but he emphasized that there was something even more crucial, the fighting spirit to overcome all odds and land a hit on their opponent. He explained that this was why they would undergo training called endurance while receiving any attack. As he looked at Fenrir, still biting his arm, he stuttered, revealing that he had finally succeeded. He then began to gather all his mana into one arm, not stopping until he was sure it was sufficient. The mysterious man was shocked, realizing it was improbable for Setsuna to use his arm, and wondered if Setsuna had purposefully concealed the fact that he was charging his mana all this time. He knew that the summoned beasts were out of control, so if Setsuna showed them even a slight opening, he could finish them off in a single strike. Layla and Drago watched him with fear and worry. He then shouted that he had put all his remaining mana into his fist and launched his charged bullet skill at Fenrir. The impact hit Fenrir, causing Carol, who was directly behind it, to be thrown away, and the other summons lined up behind Fenrir were shattered into pieces by the force of his charged bullet attack. As his charged bullet dissipated along with the summons, Setsuna noticed Carol collapsing and immediately rushed to her. He caught her just before she hit the floor. Carol, nearly depleted of mana, made a painful sound in her sleep, prompting him to sigh in relief that she was all right. He carefully lowered her to the floor as the students looked on, unable to believe the scene unfolding before them. The host, stuttering, announced that the winner was Setsuna Cromwell. The headmaster smiled as the host declared that it had been around a century since the last victory by the close combat department at the Elmridge Magic Academy match. Proudly, Setsuna raised his injured fist and smiled, eliciting screams of excitement and cheers from the audience. Other students questioned what they had just witnessed, having never seen such a technique before, while others recognized it as a devastating strike. Layla was amazed and couldn't believe that he had really won, while Drago happily shouted that he had done well. The fireball man from earlier collected his winnings, telling his friend that he knew Setsuna could do it. Meanwhile, the mysterious man was stunned and couldn't believe that Setsuna had managed to survive the situation, admitting to himself that he shouldn't underestimate Setsuna's growth. He then approached the formation mage, from whom he had retrieved the mark, and coldly informed him that he was no longer needed. After taking his mark back, he realized they had already pinpointed the location of the formation mage and then erased the trace on the formation mage's nape. Lionel rushed to where he thought the mysterious man might be, but to his surprise, he found the formation mage unconscious on the floor. Grasping the gravity of the situation, he realized it was worse than he thought. Simultaneously, the barrier on the stage began to slowly disappear, which he noticed. The headmaster then jumped onto the stage and approached him, commenting that Carol had indeed taken quite a blow after all her summons were defeated simultaneously. Looking at Carol, he replied that it seemed she was under someone's control. The headmaster checked on Carol and agreed with him, suggesting that her condition might be due to some magical device. He advised leaving the rest to the academy. Smiling, the headmaster called him by his full name and told him that since he had shown his true power, the promise would be kept. He thanked the headmaster, who then walked away, telling him to come to his chamber the next day. Later, in the medical room, the healer treated his wounds, noting that while the external injuries should be fine for now, his internal wounds had not yet healed, so he should rest. He nodded in understanding, then pulled his long sleeve back on just as someone knocked on the door. Layla, Drago, Lionel, and the children visited him, asking if he was okay. He replied affirmatively and waved his hand, assuring them that he was fine. Layla happily congratulated him again on his victory, while Drago also congratulated him, proclaiming him a pride of the close combat magic community. The children excitedly told him how cool he was, making him smile with happiness. After their visit, they all left to let him rest, but Lionel returned briefly to inform him that the formation mage had survived an attack that left him unconscious. Regarding Carol, she was recovering but would likely face questioning once she was awake. Lionel then shared his concern that during the incident, it appeared he had been specifically targeted, and asked if he had any idea what was happening. A moment later, the mysterious man appeared in Carol's room and attempted to touch the door, but was blocked by magic. He noted that it was a barrier meant to ward off intruders, yet he found it trivial and easily grasped the doorknob. Entering Carol's room, he thought about the need to eliminate her first and then Setsuna next. Approaching her, he aimed to erase any trace connecting him to the incident and extended his hand, releasing dark magic toward her. Just as the magic was about to strike Carol, someone intervened unexpectedly. Setsuna appeared, swinging his sword at the mysterious man to protect Carol. Confronting him, Setsuna declared that he knew the man would try to silence Carol by targeting her, lamenting that he really didn't want to meet him under such circumstances, revealing that the mysterious man was Leo, the second strongest long-ranged mage. He faced Leo, glaring at him in anger, but Leo just laughed off his reaction, smilingly telling him that he was already exposed, even though he thought he hadn't left any traces. He told Leo that while there indeed was no evidence, witnessing his actions just now had convinced him, causing Leo to look at him in confusion as silence fell over the room. Leo then suggested they talk outside, remarking that the room was filled with the scent of medication. They stepped out, but he paused, remembering that his internal wounds hadn't yet healed. Leo commented on his fierce expression and asked how long he had suspected him of being the culprit. He replied that his suspicions arose after the ceremony of blessing when Leo was conspicuously absent, and after considering his personality, he felt an ominous sense. He also mentioned the incident where Leo lost his position as the long-range department representative, adding that even if Actor had used underhanded methods, it was unlikely for Leo to lose against him. Leo admitted he didn't expect him to piece everything together, but he told Leo that his suspicions had just turned into conviction, especially since the same dark mana was infused in his attacks during the final match of the exchange matches, startling Leo. Suddenly, Leo released dark magic power, asking him who he was referring to. Red lines appeared on Leo's face and neck as he inquired if he perhaps knew about the great person. Horrified, he realized that the shape-shifting of Leo's mana marked him as a subordinate of the evil god, and knew he must stop Leo immediately. Leo, walking closer, sadly remarked that he couldn't let him do whatever he wanted anymore, despite wanting to continue their game. He said goodbye, but in response, he rushed at Leo with his sword and lunged forward. Shockingly, his sword didn't even get close to Leo, reminding him of a previous encounter when his team tried to hit Vindrake. Leo revealed that he had been granted authority over mana nullification by the Great Person, meaning no magic could reach him. Undeterred, he swung his sword again, but just like before, it didn't come close to Leo. Realizing it wasn't the right time, knowing the mana nullification only activated upon contact with an attack, he thought to strike from Leo's blind spot. Swiftly, he moved behind Leo and launched his sword attack, only for it to shatter once more without hitting Leo. Leo told him that resistance was futile because his mana detection was faster than his own, startling him. Then, Leo unleashed a fire magic attack, expressing a desire to fight him once he had fully recovered. He managed to brace himself against the force of the attack, preventing himself from being thrown. Leo walked closer, admiring his prowess and remarking that normally, close combat magic didn't reach such levels. He noted that if he had chosen long-range magic, they could have had a longer duel, but it no longer mattered because he intended to kill him right there. Leo then threw something sharp at his leg, piercing it. He screamed in pain, realizing that Leo was targeting his existing wound from the final. Glaring at Leo, he stuttered out his name, questioning why he was doing this. Leo coldly replied that he was tired of that world and, in a way, enjoyed destroying what others had built, likening it to a child smashing a sandcastle. He then recalled his team's desperate pleas for life as they fought against Vindrake's army, only to be slaughtered by the demons. Furious, he yelled at Leo to stop playing games and asked if he was really Leo. But Leo just concentrated his dark magic in his hand and calmly told him to shut up. Seeing this, he also gathered mana in his palm, realizing he was still far from using a mana blade and would need to strike at point-blank range as quickly as possible. He shouted to himself to remember the sensation from when he punched Vindrake, clenching his fist and gathering mana, believing he still had a chance. But then, the ground beneath him shattered as Leo attacked, taunting that he was too slow. He noticed Leo's casting time was incredibly fast and wondered if it was the power of the evil god. Suddenly, someone blocked Leo's dark magic with a spell just before it struck him, shouting for them to stop. They both saw it was white flames. The white flame shot directly at Leo, who fortunately nullified it. Sensing mana above them, he looked up and saw the headmaster astride his white dragon. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 3 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.